Playing through Ghost of Tsushima, it's very apparent this story has a huge emphasis on honor, betrayal, and choice, as well as the consequences of those actions when chosen in a given situation. Betrayal is going to be the main focus for today, as it's going to be used to explain the story of Sensei Ishikawa and how a master has to deal with the betrayal of his students and what the consequences of these actions are. I want to put together a timeline real quick of Ishikawa's story, as it's very all over the place and some of it's actually a lie throughout some of the story quests, so let's start from the very beginning. So Sensei Ishikawa was actually a part of a clan called Clan Nagao. He was very young and prideful, but also a legendary archer, so much so that one of his students, Hironori Nagao, was inspired by him. Ishikawa would train him, but Hironori Nagao would use his skills to lead a rebellion against the clan. And while he was slain in battle very quickly, he did manage to kill lots of the clan's strongest warriors. There was a story spun around the island that Hironori died fighting bandits, but that's what the clan did to save face and not ruin the legacy that they had built. Ishikawa could not save his legacy or reputation, however, as he was the teacher of Hironori, so they granted Ishikawa mercy and allowed him to live, but he had to resign as teacher. But even though he resigned, he still wanted to teach his way of the bow to people and for it to be learned by others, which is why he took in a new student sometime later. This student would be named Tomoe. The reason why he continued to teach the way of the bow is that he states that the way of the bow is my life, and without it, it would feel like death, and he chose life. Tomoe traveled to the dojo to study, but it was a bit of a walk as she grew up in the Umugi prefecture, where her mom was mostly part of a merchant family. Tomoe, before showing up to Ishikawa's dojo, was as stated before in the Umugi prefecture, but when she was a teenager, she would travel to the Otsuna prefecture, pretty close to where Umugi was, with a group of her friends who were also thieves, and they would terrorize the villagers there for years, as stated in one of the side quests. Ishikawa soon realized that she was fearless and very skilled at archery, and she showed up out of nowhere with a makeshift bow from her father and continued to sink arrows into the target and never left even if asked to. She still stayed true to her thief tendencies, as when she would be practicing, she would carry a blade in her sleeve at all times, and when it was night, she would hoard and steal food for herself. Ishikawa noticed these tendencies but blew them off, as once he started to notice her skill, he intended on making her the next heir via adopting her and making her a samurai. But once Tomoe learned the skills necessary, she ended up using this knowledge to teach a group of assassins, which ended up paying her very well for the teachings. Tomoe, just like Hironori, used Ishikawa's teaches and backstory to exploit him and betray him. Because of this betrayal he received, Ishikawa handled the situation as he would any other common murderer. He retaliated against her and attacked her. Even though it was different, as Tomoe was a student of Ishikawa's, he always states very clearly that he makes no exception to anyone. And this is why in-game Ishikawa comments on Jin's ghost's reputation, saying that he does not want Jin to succumb to the ways of the ghost, as he would lose yet another student. It's a weird dynamic Tomoe and Ishikawa have, as Ishikawa was very quick to spill his entire backstory and his teachings to a gifted archer, while Tomoe said nothing of her past and kept it all hidden. But now that we're up to date though, we could finally jump back to the present and see what's going on. We first meet Sensei Ishikawa at his dojo at the Hiyoshi Springs. When we arrive, the shooting area is torn up like there was a confrontation involved. After some investigation, footprints are found which point to a quarters, and inside is Sensei Ishikawa. He states that he was attacked by bandits. This is one of the many lies he will be telling us throughout the story, as we find out later that it was actually his student Tomoe who attacked him. Jin, not knowing this at the time, accompanies Ishikawa to help look for her. You end up finding a Japanese quiver sometime later and piece together the puzzle and find out that it actually belongs to Tomoe. It's at this point that Ishikawa teaches Jin how to use the bow correctly and trains him on how to achieve that, almost as if he knows his student won't be coming back under his wing and needs a new student to teach the way of the bow about. Jin and Ishikawa then make it to Fort Nakayama and stick out the place to come up with an attack. Searching the fort finds more questions than answers. You find Japanese arrows specifically crafted by Tomoe. A woman's kimono are found at the fort as well. It's discovered that it seemed that she taught the Mongols the way of the bow and showed off her skill with archery in order to survive and live. One of the survivors states that Tomoe shot his wife. This is explained much more later in the story, as she did this to simultaneously grant the prisoners a quick death instead of a more painful, torturous one by the Mongols, while also showing off her skill to the Mongols so she would not be killed in the process. So now with the information learned at the fort, for the rest of the game, it's Jin and Ishikawa tracking down and hunting Tomoe to pay for her crimes. You can meet Ishikawa in the dojo once again to continue the hunt. Ishikawa is worried that Jin isn't strong enough to fight her, so he'll be testing Jin while also hunting Tomoe down simultaneously. You come across the lighthouse, and Jin ends up scouting ahead, and while investigating the scene, he gets ambushed. There isn't too many Mongols, so it's not a huge issue, but once Jin is done, Jin will then comment about the ambush. Ishikawa knew there was an ambush coming, but he states that if Jin couldn't handle a few Mongols, he wouldn't be able to handle Tomoe. Jin is taken aback by this, as this is war and no time for funny tests, and can relate to Tomoe in some way as to why she left him, as his methods for testing are a bit questionable. You follow the Mongol trail to a nearby encampment where the Mongols are holding a couple captives. Tomoe was giving orders to these Mongols and has plans to attack Hiyoshi Springs next. Meeting up with Ishikawa again, he is next to his dojo devising a plan to defend the springs. The villagers are worried about their stuff being stolen and their houses being burned, so they have no plans of leaving. Jin and Ishikawa sit atop the dojo and plan together. The plan to defend the village is to think about where archers would most likely be set up for an attack, and then hopefully go to those positions and find hunting parties to destroy them. After going to the designated positions, Jin and Ishikawa wipe out the Mongol forces and halt the attack very quickly. Just in this one tale though, Ishikawa has lied to us twice already. Once about why he retired, and the second was about the identity of Hironori. This is why I recapped this all in the beginning of the video instead of delving into it as we go, as there's so many different convoluted plot points going on and lots of lying, it's a bit confused to keep track of, but still, it's very obvious that he has a tendency to lie about his past. Now that the Mongol groups are taken care of, defending the village should be just a little bit easier, so the two meet back at the dojo and talk about the plan a bit more. During this plan, Ishikawa suggests that they let the Mongols walk in so they can catch Tomoe off guard. Jin immediately disagrees, as this puts the villagers' lives at risk and makes them an unnecessary sacrifice. While discussing what is really worth the villagers or capturing Tomoe, an arrow will land behind them. The Mongols decided to flank and attack behind you. The plan was for that hunting party not to kill the two of them, but to delay the defending of Hiyoshi Springs, making attacking Hiyoshi Springs a lot easier. The two then set a position at the bottom of the hill just in front of Hiyoshi Springs, so that the only thing separating the Mongols from certain victory is them. Flaming arrows are rewarded to Jin at this point, and you can use it to light the grass on fire to wipe out more than one at a time if you so choose to, but once all the forces are clear, Tomoe is then spotted burning the Nagao banner. This is when the story about Hironori Nagao is learned. With the defending of Hiyoshi Springs though, Tomoe then pulls back and sets her sights on land more north in order to establish order with the Mongols again. After arriving north, it's discovered Ishikawa has gone ahead and that Jin should join the hunt when he gets there. After finding his location, it's discovered he is surrounded by Mongols and is injured. Once Ishikawa is saved by Jin, Jin mentions how he ended up getting caught. Ishikawa claims it was because he was outmaneuvered, but it was mostly because he was on the trail to finding Tomoe, got distracted, and then got caught soon after. Just from this interaction, it's clear Ishikawa has his priorities, which is fine, but when it's the only thing you think about long enough to get distracted and almost killed, then it's a problem. Continuing forward, Jin and Ishikawa ride to a nearby camp while also delving into the backstory of Tomoe and why she left, which of course we already explained in the intro, which had to do with her being in the Umugi prefecture, leaving, terrorizing camps with her band of thieves, and then moving to the other area of the island. Once the two get to camp, after surveying, it's clear that the camp is clearly run by Tomoe, as her signature dead samurai target practice and Japanese arrows are found all around the camp. The camp also has a note of a supply list containing targets and delivery locations all over Toyotama. Her plan is to set up more training camps to train more Mongol warriors, two of which of the locations have been named, which is Kushi and Otsuna. The other part of the note says that she promises the Khan's archers will know how to be masters at archery, and then also promises to deliver the heads of Jin and Ishikawa. First is the Kushi camp location. Upon arriving to the Kushi prefecture, some of the townspeople are terrified of Jin. This is some questionable behavior considering Jin's accomplishments so far. It's discovered that Tomoe and her Mongols have been terrorizing traders and caravan runners along the road, and she left a note on one of the bodies that says it's from Ishikawa and Jin, essentially framing the two for the murders taking place in the prefecture. Following the tracks, you find an abandoned camp with a woman tied up. When you talk to her, you find out that she was actually bait used by Tomoe to lure you in, and then once you came to rescue her, she would end up being shot. Ishikawa mentions how he actually talked to this captive woman days before this engagement, as she mentioned that she saw a Japanese woman with a bow with Mongols. He then asked her to look into it and report back in a couple days. The intention was so that Tomoe's body would be the one at the camp and not the captive lady, but it's clear it didn't work out that way. It's very obvious by this time how Ishikawa's character was built, a very excellent archer who is also extremely stubborn, wants to keep his past a secret, and constantly wants to do things his way and alone. But now that the camp in Kushi prefecture is done, the only camp left is in Otsuna. It's possible that destroying this camp could lose her support with the Mongols and make it easier for her to be tracked down without her Mongol support. So that's one of the outcomes the two are hoping for. The camp was very similar to the one in Kushi, as it's also containing very similar key points, like Mongols, Japanese arrows, and samurai bodies for target practice. While there weren't any records of her plans with the Mongols, like in Kushi, there are footprints that lead to Tomoe and an eventual ambush. So while Ishikawa fights, Jin follows Tomoe to the Musashi coast. Tomoe didn't fight, she actually wanted to talk. She warns Jin to watch his back and that Ishikawa might attack him the same way he did to her, and then briefly mentioning that she is all alone, possibly meaning the Mongols and Khans have withdrawn their support from her. She eventually jumps off the cliff and has now completely disappeared, assumed to be heading even more north than she already was. Meeting up with Ishikawa at Jokaku's temple, Ishikawa discusses stories of his past grievances and mistakes and teaching Jin about not letting the ghost consume him. Upon arriving at the agreed location in eastern Jokaku, it's discovered that Ishikawa isn't there. You see a burned and destroyed cart next to Japanese arrows. Upon arriving, shows up a woman named Matsu. You find out later that this is Tomoe and not a woman named Matsu, but I will be using Matsu's name a couple times throughout this part of the tale, so just remember Matsu and Tomoe are the same person. Matsu claims that Ishikawa was going to hide in her house to find Tomoe. This is clearly false, as Tomoe couldn't have worn a mask 24/7, so Ishikawa must have known what her face looks like and would automatically know that that's her and not Matsu. Jin is also asked multiple times in conversation throughout the trip on a few other different questions while they've been searching for her snares to see if she caught any food, like the story about the ghost being a demon who is 10 foot tall. Upon finding the last snare, you see the ocean. Tomoe comments on her leaving Tsushima Island and sailing to the mainland, opening up an inn in Kyoto so she can greet all the beautiful people of Japan while her servants rob them blind. A questionable goal, but nonetheless a reason to leave a war-torn island. Once making it inside her house, Jin knows that it's Tomoe, and then Tomoe confesses that the Mongols withdrew her support, but in order to help, she will let Jin know the locations of where the Mongols will strike next, which is Umugi Cove. She claims it's for revenge, but it's really so that she can sneak away and sail for Japan while the two aren't looking. You then meet up with Ishikawa and tell him the details, and then meet up with him again at Umugi so that you can go to a nearby hut and discuss the plans with Tomoe. The three travel to Umugi Cove so that you three can stop the attack. They ambush the remaining Mongols and finish off those who survive the initial ambush, and then after the fight, Tomoe is nowhere to be seen. Jin and Ishikawa chase her down to the coast, where they find her on a boat leaving to the mainland with a note next to her mask. The note reads, "Sensei Ishikawa, we have judged each other harshly, but Buddha tells us that our greatest enemies can be our best teachers. I am grateful for your teaching and for the chance to fight by your side a final time. I have become your student and I would have become your daughter, but the way of the bow is behind me now. What lies ahead? I am like an arrow shot from a bow, who knows where the wind will take me." Ishikawa is content with this and allows her to leave and go to Kyoto. He tells Jin to promise him not to make the same mistakes that he did, and that is the conclusion of Ishikawa's storyline. A stubborn master wanting to teach even after what has happened in his past, but became too hellbent on teaching his way of the bow and having an heir in his lineage that he couldn't see the darkness that surrounded his student. But this experience has humbled him in realizing that maybe there was some error in his ways, and he keeps learning this throughout the side quests that you do with him. These side quests make him learn that what he did was wrong and maybe he could have gone about it a different way, but the past is the past, and you must learn from it as to not repeat the same mistakes in the future. One thing I noticed, actually, was how Tomoe and Ishikawa is very similar to Jin and Shimura in terms of their relationship, with Tomoe and Jin being the heir and the next samurai, with Ishikawa and Shimura being the lords and the kind of father figure for them, and also kind of how this relationship and such foreshadowed a little bit at the end of the game, as Ishikawa says that only a child thinks his elders are perfect, which is a really nice reflection of Ishikawa, and then also how that ties into the end of the game with Shimura, and the whole ending that happens towards, of course, the end of the game. I just thought that was a really interesting interaction that may have been overlooked by a few people, so I thought to bring this up at the end of the video, because just for some food for thought. I want to thank you all for joining me on this journey of Ishikawa's side quest. Of course, let me know what you guys think about the side quest, and especially the video in the comments below. Expect another side quest character next week as usual. I'm not sure who we'll be tackling, but that'll be surprised for when the video goes up. But thank you for watching the video today, guys. Like the video if you do enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, like I said, let me know what you thought about the side quest, Ishikawa as a character, in the video in the comments below. And take care. I'll see you guys next week for another video.